118 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for being here. If you're a longtime listener of the show, you probably just noticed I didn't use my intro, and it's true, I didn't. I have a pre-recorded intro that I've been using since I started the show back in 2016, and I'm kind of just changing things up. I will maybe use the intro again, but anyway, so hope that's okay with you, and I'm just happy to have you here. If you're new to the podcast, there are 117 episodes for you to go binge listen to. So have a listen and welcome. We're happy to have you here. I have a few quick housekeeping things before we get to to today's episode. I cannot speak. The first thing is, and I am stuttering a little bit because I wanted to find it here. The first thing is I got a review on Saturday as I record this, and it's November 2018. It's a recent review, but it's actually a question. So to the person whose Apple username is HEHDH Dixie J, that's HEHDH Dixie J, they said confused, but it was 5 stars. So thanks so much. I don't know if your name might be Dixie for not, making it a 1-star question. I appreciate that. But it was a question that says, does anyone else know why the website link along with the Facebook Pixel link tutorial are no longer valid links even when you search on Google? Can't use any of this info without that Facebook Pixel video. So it looks like Dixie was asking a question specifically about a podcast episode that I did on Facebook with Sarah Evans, who, as you might remember, is the owner of Sarah Evans Weddings. She's a planner and actually most recently transitioned into a role at a venue in Colorado with her in-laws, which is really exciting. But anyway, I wanted to let you know, whoever wrote this review, that Sarah no longer teaches on Facebook. So those links are probably deprecated. The episode is over 1 year old. A lot of the content here on the podcast, almost all of it, is evergreen, but people go out of business, people start new projects, and unfortunately I just don't have the bandwidth to kind of see what everyone's doing and update all of the links since we're over 100 episodes now. But if you would just Google search how to use the Facebook Pixel, you'll find instruction on how to do that. It won't be from Sarah specifically, but you'll be able to achieve exactly what we talk about in that episode, because even though Sarah's not teaching about it anymore and those links aren't working, there's still a Facebook Pixel that you can use. That information is still true. Just head over to Google and do a Google search and it'll come right up for you. But thanks so much for asking that question. And if you have been thinking of a question, the best way to get a hold of me is at email, kinsey@shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com, or a really easy way to get a hold of me is to DM me on Instagram. So the next thing that I want to tell you is that this episode, as you can tell from the title, is with Kayla Hollatz, who I absolutely love. I have been following her for many years, and to be honest with you, I lost this episode. I could not believe it. At the end of every year for the podcast, I will go through everything, start my organization process. I move a lot of things off my computer to my external hard drive and just do a bunch of organizing. And I was doing that and I came across this episode, and I remember all of my episodes, but I thought, I don't remember publishing this. I remember the content because it's about content creation and I'm always interested in that, but I don't remember actually publishing this episode. And so I went back into my archives and sure enough, I never posted this episode. And Kayla, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. What I do know is I looked at the date we recorded and sure enough, it was spring 2017, which is when I got my new desktop Mac and I had a lot of problems with it. And I actually thought the hard drive was kaput. I don't know if some of you remember that, and I had to take it into the store, but it was chaos. So I think it got lost in that shuffle. That's the only thing I can think of. It's the first time I have ever lost an episode that I never published. And Kayla, my sincere, deep apologies. But lucky for you guys, the content is 100% evergreen, unlike that Facebook episode. And there actually is no date reference except for at the very end when I asked Kayla what her plans for 2017 are. So wanted to give you that heads up. And before we get to the episode, let me tell you a little bit about Kayla. She's a website copywriter, a ghostwriter, and a marketing strategist who loves nothing more than crafting brand stories with soul. She helps creative entrepreneurs entrepreneurs and small businesses communicate their value, discover their brand voice, and optimize their messaging for more conversions through website copywriting and ongoing content creation. Because you need more than the right words, you need the right story and strategy, and Kayla will help you get there. Without further ado, let's go to the show. Kayla Hollatz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kinsey. I cannot wait to chat with you and connect with your listeners, and I'm seriously just so honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
It is truly my pleasure. We were just talking about Kayla's awesome Twitter chat that she hosts every Wednesday, right?
Yes, every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central. It's our third year doing it, which is still so crazy to say, but it's so much fun.
Yes, and I feel like, so she does that Twitter chat, which I have never taken a part of personally, but I know about it, and that's why I was asking her about it offline, and then I just realized, gosh, I have been kind of, you know how we follow people like on the internet and know who they are, and that's how I feel about you, so it's just such a pleasure to talk to you, and so the feeling is mutual. I'm so honored to have you, and I can't wait to chat about content today.
Awesome. I'm so excited to chat about, of course, one of my favorite subjects, especially with you. So I can't wait.
Cool. Well, let's dive in. As you know, I gave everyone kind of that professional bio at the beginning, at the top of the show, but I would absolutely love for you to just briefly, in your own words, tell us who you are and how you serve the wedding industry.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that great intro as well. But like you said, I am a copywriter as well as a brand strategist and a content creator, which I know content creation is really what we're going to be diving into today. But really how I kind of found myself here was that I originally, my background is in PR and copywriting and social media and all things really digital marketing. And so I did that for a while, professionally through some full-time agency jobs, and just really found that my heart was really to help other entrepreneurs, especially those who are, solopreneurs, and just really in that stage of building their team. And I've also loved working with people who are very visually creative too, which is of course a huge reason why I found myself working with people in the wedding industry, because it is such a visual driven industry. And a lot of times, of course, there's still that beautiful story that's there that really is great to uncover that in words just as much as it is in visuals. So it's been really fun to be able to work with all different kinds of, wedding vendors, whether it be wedding planners or wedding photographers, love them too, different event venues, all sorts of different people. So it's been so awesome. And I love being able to, just dive really deep into each entrepreneur's brand voice and being able to just discover that together, which I think is just such a fun process that we both go through together and collaborate on, and then being able to what we call in the industry ghostwrite, which sounds like very mysterious, and it kind of is, which is just really me going behind the scenes, being able to write in a entrepreneur's specific brand voice, being able to, of course, share it with them and kind of tweak it as we might need to. And then they get to put their name on it at the end of the day. And so it's like they wrote the piece and it sounds just like them. But I'm kind of like the almost like Oz behind the curtain, right? Of writing the content. So that's just really kind of me in a nutshell and what I absolutely love doing.
Something you mentioned was that you have had the chance to work with like venues and photographers and planners. And, we all do serve the wedding industry, but they do run very different businesses. And so
Sure.
A question that I was thinking of was, how have you seen with your clients, and specifically those types of wedding clients, how have you seen that those who commit to a consistent content practice, how has it kind of transformed their business?
Absolutely. That is such a good question. I see a lot of the times because the clients that I'm working with, a lot of times what they're trying to do is, of course, they're trying to hit those more high-end brides. And
Yes.
one of the things that I see the most, of course, with that is that with high-end brides, they really want to create and have that relationship with a vendor before they reach out. And so being able to have consistent content where you're sharing something on a blog or like you do with this wonderful podcast and YouTube videos and all sorts of different kinds of forms that content can take. I think being able to figure out which is going to be the best fit not only for you but also for that bride that you are trying to market to and trying to connect to. I think again, with that consistency, it just really helps too because you're able to stay visible as well as just always reminding them that you are there and ready for them when they are ready to reach out to you.
I love that. So how have you found, not what you've found, but really what do you think it is about like podcasting and blogging and all of, videos, everything you mentioned is free content. What is it about free content that our audiences just crave so much? Like why is it good to, create that consistent practice we're talking about? And aside from attracting our ideal client, which yes, we get that, but what does that mean? Like, why won't they just buy from us right away, Kayla?
Sure. I mean, it's such a good question because of course everybody loves something that's free. But I think a lot of times what we think about is, when we think about signing up for something, we think of maybe like a free discount or even a free, maybe like a sticker or some sort of like physical product. But I think the really cool thing that we get to do as online business owners with our websites is being able to actually use that kind of free content to instead educate our brides. And so that's one of the things I really love doing with all of my entrepreneurs is helping them not only tell their own story so that they're able to connect in that very genuine way, but also, they really are educating their brides and getting them to a point to where they are going to be ready to, work with them. But even if somebody doesn't necessarily reach out to them and works with them, they're always going to have kind of that top tier, visibility, as well as just leaving this person with just an absolutely amazing lasting impression, which is really all that we could want, as wedding vendors and business owners.
I agree. Have you, I like that you mentioned educating our brides and educating our couples and things of that nature. Do you have any, like either stats, not really like, they don't have to be like legit numbers, but like personal thoughts on what you have found works best for your particular clients? Is it more of like the inspiration, like here's how you can use gold calligraphy on marble coasters? Or is it more like the educational pieces where, it's like 10 things that you must ask your planner or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what have you found works best for the clients that you particularly serve?
That is such a good question because along with working with people in the wedding industry, I also work with, people who are in B2B industries, which of course it's going to be way different trying to reach both of those people. And so what I have found with my clients and the specific high-end brides that they have been looking for, a lot of times they really need that personal storytelling. They want to know the why behind what a specific entrepreneur is doing. And one of the things that I think is so great about working with small business owners and something that we should always remember is that the great thing is that we get to be the face of our business. And so being able to bring in all of those personal aspects and really not necessarily just being a logo and being able to connect with people, I think that is something that's huge to have in our arsenal. So what I have found is kind of coupling that along with that, again, the educational content that we've been talking about, but sometimes you just have to present it in a different way. So it may not necessarily be like in the marketing industry here, where you see all the time, like 10 ways to convert and do this, and those sorts of tips. It may just look a little bit different with how you exactly present it and format it. But you can still be educating, your brides, but just through a really beautifully woven story, which a lot of times is really what brides are looking for.
Mm-hmm. They want to kind of see themselves in that story.
Absolutely, yes.
I love that. So if we're kind of listening now thinking, okay, I am creating content consistently, or I want to be creating content consistently, what are kind of three tactical, quote, best practices would you recommend for us to continue on our consistent content journey, or if we want to like get there?
Sure. No, that is a really good question. So I would say for the first best practice, something that I always have all of my clients start out with is really digging into exactly what their brand voice is. And I know something that really helps with this is actually going back to the basics. And I know some of us kind of like groan when we think about it because we're like, how many times can we go over our like mission statement, core values, all of those things? But really having those written down on a sheet of paper, on a document, wherever it makes sense, and being able to look back at those things really helps us kind of get in that mindset. And also, it's really important for us to know exactly who we're speaking to as well. And so what I like to do with my clients too, and something that I think might be helpful for your listeners, is creating an actual story around your ideal client. So instead of thinking of, your bride as a list of demographics, like their age range is this and their location is here. Instead of thinking about it like that, try to create some sort of story around it. Talk about their strengths, talk about their, where they like to put their money, talk about their lifestyle, talk about what their ideal day looks like. I think the more that you weave that story, the more when you go to your content, it's going to be a little bit easier to, figure out exactly how you want to talk to that person. And so also with understanding your brand voice, it really helps if you can also, talk out loud. And that really helps a lot of my clients who have a hard time with either creating outlines for different content, or they're just not exactly sure how to have their content sound like them. That's a really huge thing because sometimes, translating that into words on the paper can be difficult. So talking out loud and recording yourself and listening to yourself back can be really helpful for people who are having a hard time with that and really just kind of want to pick out some of those cool pieces, because a lot of times we don't even realize how much we know about ourselves and about our brand voice and our business. And we really have all the answers within us. So it's just kind of finding different ways to bring those out. And so the second thing that I would say, now that you have a pretty good feeling about your brand voice, is to start thinking about, what consistency is going to work for your business. And this is really huge because, of course, a lot of times what we do when we start to really get on this content train is that we create a ton of content up front, and then our passion for it kind of dies out. And then we had all of this great, weekly consistent content. And then we may have, a few months where wedding season, of course, gets really busy. And then it can be difficult to get back into it, of course. So I think the best thing, of course, is just, finding that consistency that's going to work for your business. I usually recommend, to have that weekly content. But I know for a lot of business owners, sometimes that's just not necessarily possible. So I think at least having a bi-weekly blog post and a bi-weekly newsletter can really help to at least still stay visible and make sure that you are still available to kind of connect with those brides who are interested in connecting with you.
I love that.
And yes, like so incredibly important. And also, my third tip that helps so much with that is just creating an archive of content. So that in these, in wedding season, in these really busy seasons where you are onboarding a lot of brides and those sorts of things, it can really help to just have an archive of content that you can pull from that you've already created. And it gives you a little bit more of that feeling of security, like you've got something in case something else comes up, which, of course, for all of us, we know that something always comes up.
Right.
So that archive can just help us get in a really kind of secure and safe space with that. So then we can also be creative in all the other areas of our business too.
So when you say archive, that sounds different than an editorial calendar kind of. It sounds like you've already maybe used it or you've already written it. Tell me what you mean by that.
Sure. No, that's a super good question. So I think having, like you said, an editorial calendar is so smart. Something that helps me with that sometimes is thinking about, if we're trying to figure out what our content strategy is, thinking about either a monthly theme or, a specific category of our blog that we really want to focus in on. So kind of creating that and putting it into an actual calendar so you can look at your content strategy and in your content calendar and see what you actually are going to be writing and doing, so you don't feel like you have to go to a blank document and think, oh, what should I write about today? Because we've all had those moments before. But when I'm talking about the archive, what I'm really saying is just having a group of blog posts and newsletters, or even if it is, again, the podcast episodes and the video episodes, having those all ready to go, but just not necessarily all posting them at once, and figuring out what that consistent schedule is, that can really help. So I know for me, and especially for my clients as well, we make sure that we have at least a month's worth of content before we kind of enter the next month, because we want to make sure that, again, you kind of have that security of, I totally know what's going out this month, and so now I can focus on the next month and kind of give myself a little bit more of that breathing room.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Do you think that, something I hear a lot is repurposing content? We've actually talked about it on the show with Abby Herman, and I loved it. But what I heard after that episode was people are kind of nervous to repurpose content or whatever, because they think that, well, everyone has already seen it. What are your thoughts on that?
This is such a good question, because actually it's something that I used to have a hard time with too, because I used to think that every single thing that I wrote, I had to make sure that it was absolutely brand new and no sentence was the same as anything else I had ever written. But a lot of times what we see is that, of course, we can't think that people who are coming to our blogs or the podcast videos, whatever it may be, a lot of times they haven't seen the full archive of everything that you offer. And so being able to actually leverage the content that you've already created, but just, again, presenting it in a different way. So maybe you're not, of course, copy and pasting the whole entire blog post, but you're taking pieces of it and maybe going deeper and elevating some of the content that's there, or maybe you're just adding to some of those blog posts or different things that have already gotten a lot of traffic and traction. So you're getting a lot more SEO value out of those things. I mean, again, and I'm sure, in that episode, you talk about all the different ways that you can repurpose. But I think, the great thing to just think about it is that, however you can present the content to, create the most amount of value for your visitor, for your bride, whoever is kind of coming to your website, it really helps to have that all there for them. So they anytime they're thinking what's next, they know the next intuitive step.
That's so good. And no matter what we think, not one person, not even us, sees every single thing we do online. So
it's so true. It's so true.
Thinking, oh no, Kayla published this last week. Literally, that's probably never happened.
It's so true. I actually used to feel that way about even my social media posts. When we're thinking about content like that, I used to feel so weird about, oh my gosh, I know this tweet did really, really well, months ago, but can I use it again? And it's so silly because, now I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I definitely like rebuffer and reuse content. Of course that performs well, because you want to continue to have content that performs well. So that always helps. But it's an interesting thing, because I think as business owners, we just keep thinking like new all the time. And of course that is good. But I think being able to look back and actually utilize what has already been proven to perform well, I think is really being smart.
I agree. That's just a good business decision.
Yes.
Tell me, you are writing for yourself. You're also writing for your clients. How do you come up with all of this content?
Oh man, that is such a good question. I definitely have my days where I am just, oh my gosh, it is so much content. But I mean, the great part, of course, is that I absolutely adore it. And so one of the ways that really helps me, of course, in just brainstorming a lot of that content, since I am working with different industries, as well as, of course, always wanting to be visible for my own brand too. I like to brainstorm all of my content if I can in one sitting. And I actually personally do that for my blog on a quarterly basis. So that really helps me to break it down into what is the main goal of that quarter. And then from there, I pick what I talked about before of those monthly themes. So I know right now my monthly theme is email marketing. Oh, cool. So everything I've been talking about, with all of my audience has been email marketing, whether it's actually, of course, like in my email list or it's on my blog and those sorts of things. But yeah, just breaking it down into monthly themes and, for wedding professionals who are listening, that could be like getting ready for your wedding. And I mean, I think the more that you think about the themes, the more the content ideas come really easily. And then you're also able to think about, the different types of what we call lead magnets, which is basically just creating, those content upgrades for your website, which are either the downloadable checklists or the email courses and all of those things that you see that people use to entice people to sign up for their email list. Because we see time and time again, of course, that the most successful, wedding professionals and people in the wedding industry are those who utilize their blog in order to not only educate, brides, but also entice them enough to sign up for their email list, because that's really the area where you're able to make more of that connection, because then, you've kind of gone to that next step of getting in their inbox. So yeah, again, kind of going back to your original question, which was brainstorming all of that content, it really does help to then, just batch create all of that content. So I like to use a few different alternative forms, which are, sometimes it really helps me to just get away from my computer and use a whiteboard, or to even use Post-it notes and just scatter them all across my wall so I can group together different content ideas that make the most sense. But for me, sometimes it helps, since I know a lot of us stare at our computers all day. Yeah. It can be really nice to kind of get outside of that regular churn and kind of create something that even feels more fun. And then I also love, of course, to just make sure that all of my content ideas, after I kind of do that huge, big brain dump in one sitting, is just making sure that they match all of the categories on my blog. And that's something that is so huge, whether it's for me or for my clients, because the more you start to think about your blog in categories, the more you're going to be able to see what's going to fit and what's not necessarily going to make sense. Because I know that's something that a lot of people reach out to me about, where they say they just have no idea like what brides want to know and what's going to be the most interesting to them. So starting off with those, those categories and making sure that all the blog posts that you are going to be working on are going to fit into that. It's going to be really intuitive once you start to publish those posts for the brides.
Oh, yes. I love that. You said two things I think are so great. Well, all of it was great, but two things that were kind of similar was that structure, like figure out what your categories are on your blog. Mm-hmm. And then when you brainstorm, you also are brainstorming, like in quarterly, you're also brainstorming in monthly themes, which I think sometimes this goes back to kind of like niching down, not back to niching down, but it's kind of similar. People think that if we niche down too deep, then we will be like, we'll run out of ideas or we'll run out of stuff to talk about. But what you've actually said here is that like this structure really creates freedom, because you now know, okay, I am blogging about this category. Boom, here's all of these ideas within my theme. It really like the structure does create like ideas, and it creates freedom. It's actually the opposite of what most people think.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much, Kinsey. Like, and it's so good too, because, I would consider myself, with my creative process, I am a little bit more scattered, I think, than the normal person. And so, for the longest time, I used to think, because I didn't necessarily write or think the same way that a lot of people around me did, I was like, oh, I can't do structure. I can't do an outline. I can't do those things. And what I have found, like you just said, is that, with just kind of tweaking the structure and the outline to work for you, it can just really open up those doors to creative freedom, which is just so amazing. I'm so glad you said that.
Oh, yes. Well, you said it. I just highlighted. I just shined a light on it. Well, tell me then, how important do you think it is? Okay, so we've brainstormed, we've figured out what our categories are, we've dug into our brand voice, we know our ideal client. What if we hate blogging? Like, how important do you think it is to have a blog? And then the second part of my question is, how important do you think it is to be sharing our content on more than one platform / medium? So blogging and video, or podcasting and video. Where you land on that?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. And of course, it's really going to depend on the business owner, because there are a lot of people who have been very successful with just doing YouTube videos, right? And then there's been some people where they built their entire business almost on their podcasting. So even as a content creator who absolutely adores blogging and email marketing, I would say for sure, if you absolutely hate writing and it's not necessarily something that you are looking to outsource, I would say that, again, look at your alternatives. You could still have a blog, but maybe instead of writing a full blog post, you write, some detailed notes about something that you say during maybe you're having a bi-weekly webinar or something that then you're posting on your blog. Or maybe you are, creating like you are with your podcast. I mean, technically it's not a blog, but you can still create that into a blog-like content to where you're still getting that SEO value, and then you're still getting people who are going to stay on your website that are going to listen to that audio episode too. So I think, again, it's just kind of redefining what we see as blogging, especially as business owners, and figuring out what way that not only, we want to be able to consistently create, because that's a really important thing, but also in a form that is going to fit the brides that we are really looking for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that you said that. So really figure out, I think it goes along with your ideal client. Like, is your ideal client watching videos, or would they rather read a quick blog post? Or do they prefer to, read your microblogs on Instagram? I mean, definitely.
It's so true.
Yeah, figure it out. I mean, I am for having your own website and your own platform, because you don't own those other channels, but I love that. So figure that out first, because then it kind of helps you answer that question without you having to work as hard to say, okay, geez, I need to be on YouTube and all the things.
Absolutely. And really take it from somebody where last year I really had it as my year of experimentation. That's what I called it. And oh man, that's what it was. I basically did all of the things. And again, I kind of found that blogging in the traditional sense of writing and email marketing, for me, that just really works. It works for my audience too, which is great. And so I definitely would say, don't be afraid to experiment with a few different things and see, what is gaining traction, maybe what's not, tweaking things along the way. I definitely don't think that there's any shame in kind of trying something new, seeing what happens. And then if it's not something you enjoy, and especially if it's not something that necessarily you're getting a whole lot of traction out of from your audience, then you can just regroup and go to something else too, and simplify along the way.
Yes, I love that. I feel like there's a whole nother podcast episode here with just your year of experimentation.
Oh my gosh, the stories I could tell you. But no, such a good learning experience. And I feel like the reason why I'm able to do what I do now is because I did have that time and gave myself that grace of, trying a few different forms and figuring out what felt best for me, and then writing that permission slip for myself to actually show up in that way and not feel like I had to do everything.
Yes. So, I'm so glad you said that, because I think sometimes we are fearful to try new things because either A, we're just fearful that like someone's going to see it and they're going to make fun of us, or B, one thing has been working for so long, and surely there's something to be said for not reinventing the wheel, but like we need to, I think that many times as creatives and as small business owners, we try to assume the outcome. And we don't need to do that. You don't have to assume the outcome. You can test. Like, no one's going to punch you in the face if it doesn't work. You could try, don't assume the outcome. Do your experimentation, like Kayla, like call it that if you need to, and see what works and what doesn't. I absolutely love that you gave yourself permission to do that.
Yes. And it really does just reveal a whole lot about you too. And I found that a lot of the times by kind of testing out all of those things, especially the things in the marketing world that I felt like I quote unquote should be doing, it kind of helped me find what I like to call my must, the thing that I have to do at the end of the day that I was, really pushing aside for years and years. And so, yeah, I think it's a really good way just to reveal what you really feel like you must be doing.
What your must. I love that. I'm writing that down.
Yes. And it's also from, I think about it in this way because of the book, The Crossroads of Should and Must by Elle Luna, who is an absolutely amazing artist. And it's amazing for any person, especially in the creative industry and in our world, because it's so good to think about the things that we feel like we should be doing, and actually turning it on its head and thinking about like what we must do at the end of the day. And that's what we need to go after.
I love that. What must we do at the end of the day? That should be our main focus. That's your tweetable, Kayla.
That's my tweetable.
So tell me, I cannot believe we are almost at 30 minutes. It's so crazy. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. But we have more than established that you are so busy. You are working your own business, plus creating content for other people's businesses. And so I know that there has to be something that you do to manage your business, your projects, the tools you use. Let's talk about those.
Oh, I love it. I love talking about some tool time. So for the tools that I use, I'm actually pretty well known, especially in my local community, for running a very lean business. And so I like to take on as few tools as possible, but ones that are super powerful. And so Google Drive, of course, is a huge one. My entire life is on Google Drive, and everything that I really do with my clients, whether it is, working on edits and revisions and sharing folders, all of that is really done on Google Drive. So I absolutely love kind of my own little filing system and all of that through Google Drive. But what I really love actually is a tool called Dubsado, which is really a CRM. So that stands for a client reputation management system, as well as, an accounting software. And so for me, I've just absolutely loved it because it helps me keep not only all my contracts, invoices, quotes, proposals, all of those sorts of things in one place, but it also allows me to have my questionnaires in there and my forms. And again, it's something that has really just elevated my whole entire client experience, and something I hear about a lot when I am onboarding clients. So it's been a huge win in that respect. So I love using Dubsado as well. And then, of course, I always have to give a shout out to ConvertKit, because before I was using ConvertKit, which is my email service provider, I was actually not a fan of email marketing, which is kind of hard for me to admit because now, like, most of what I do is email marketing for clients. But, I was using MailChimp before and just had a really hard time with it. And I think it was because I kept getting stuck on the design and kind of the format of it. But once I kind of switched over to ConvertKit, started creating different email sequences and series for all of my different audiences, and just really investing heavily into that. I mean, I think that that's where my brand voice, if we're talking about me, that's really where it came alive. And so I absolutely have ConvertKit to thank for that. So those are really my big three that I use every single day.
Ah, I love it. You really are lean, but if they're working for you, that is perfect. I'm glad to hear you say that. I really am, because it can be overwhelming. There's so many tools out there that we could try, but I'm so happy to hear you say that, like, I'm running my business with these three things and they work for me.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the great things too about having an online business is we don't have, sometimes all of that overhead. And so for me, yeah, like keeping it lean and mean, like I'm all about that.
Yes. So, Kayla, as we wrap up here, I would love for you to tell us what is on the horizon for you and for your business in 2017. What are you excited about?
Oh man, that is such a good question. I feel like if you would have asked that about 6 months ago, I probably would have told you, I'm going to be working on this digital product and then this course, and I'm going to be doing these workshops. And I mean, all of that is so much fun. But I have really found kind of in this new season of my business, I've really just been all about just simplifying things, and just really getting in touch again with my purpose, and really allowing myself to take on a select few amount of clients, but people that I just am so touched by their story, and clients that I wake up in the morning and I'm so excited to write for them every day. And just really making sure that my client relationships are just absolutely just really strong. And also I've been really passionate about connecting, different people who may not be a fit for me with other people in my industry. So again, kind of that whole theme of community and collaboration really comes through with that. So it's just interesting to think about, like what does 2017 look like for me? And for me, it's a lot of kind of that slow and intentional growth. And I'm so ready for it, especially after that year of experimentation.
Slow, intentional growth. That sounds phenomenal.
Yes.
Tell everyone where they can find you online, Kayla.
Oh man. Well, of course, since I run a Twitter chat, I basically live there. So you can find me on Twitter at Kayla_Hollatz. Of course, my website is a good place to go to too, which is KaylaHollatz.com. And that's basically where I'm at.
I love it. It's perfect. Thank you so much for being here today, Kayla. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I, of course, learned a ton. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.